This original WSRE presentation is made possible by viewers like you. Thank you.
He's managed the New York Yankees, the Arizona Diamondbacks, and the Texas Rangers. Buck Showalter on this edition of Conversations. Thank you so very much for deciding to spend some time with us. We have with us today Buck Showalter. You know him. He's managed the New York Yankees, the Arizona Diamondbacks, the Texas Rangers. And of course, now he's an analyst for ESPN. Buck, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jeff.
So many people know you for what you've done in the major leagues and obviously now on ESPN. But take me back. How did it all start for Buck Showalter as far as baseball is concerned?
Well, we had a 6- and 7-year-old dungaree league. Remember when jeans used to be called dungarees?
I do remember
How
that.
far do you want me to go back? The only requisite was that you had a white T-shirt. First guy that got the magic marker got to pick the number he wanted on the back of his shirt. And it was a pickup game, basically. And we made our own backstop and had our own little league with 6-, 7-, 8-year-olds and fend for ourselves. People ask me all the time, how'd you learn how to hit the ball the other way? Well, we only had 6 or 7 guys on the team, so they couldn't put anybody out in left field, so I learned to hit it where they weren't, right? So, you know, coming up through Century and small town and just worked my way through the different levels, never having, okay, this is going to take me here, this is going to take me there. You just find a level, you play as hard and as intelligently as you can and see where it takes you. I think sometimes people use a small town for an excuse. I thought I had an advantage there, quite frankly, looking back on it.
You left Century and then went into the minors, or?
Well, you know, I went to high school, graduated from Century High School, which obviously is not there anymore. My dad was a principal up there. My mom was a nurse up there with a small hospital, and I went to junior college out there, to Chipola Junior College in Marianna. Played there 2 years and graduated from there, and went to Mississippi State University for 1 year and signed with the Yankees in 1977 after my junior year. And signed 2 contracts, one with the Yankees and one with my parents. So I had to go back and finish school, which I did, and got my degree from Mississippi State and started playing with the Yankees in '77. And I was with the Yankee organization for 19 years, starting in '77. So a lot of things transpired before I reached the big leagues. Started out as an eye in the sky coach, which was basically a guy with a walkie-talkie, and then they made that illegal. And I went down and started coaching third base, and unfortunately, Stump Merrill was fired, and I became the manager the following year in '92.
And I want to get into your tenure at the Yankees in the big league level, but what was it like coming up through the minors there? What's it like for a ball player?
Well, it's a lot different now. You know, the facilities are so much better, the travel's so much better. You know, it was, you know, I started out in Fort Lauderdale right out of college in the Florida State League and played there for about 60, 70 games and went to AA the next year in the Eastern League in New Haven, Connecticut. First time I'd really played in that cold of weather in those poor ballparks. You know, the ballparks were really shaky in the Eastern League at that point. You know, 7 or 8 lights on a pole. It was a challenging, you know, it was a challenge. And first time I'd really, in my mind, had some failure offensively. And, you know, then we moved the club, the facility so bad, Mr. Steinbrenner moved the club to Nashville, Tennessee in the in the Southern League, which facilities were better. And then I went and played in the International League in AAA in Columbus, Ohio, which was outstanding. But, you know, I had an old farm director a long time ago said, be careful about making it too nice down here. The guys won't want to get out of here. I look at some of the minor league parks these kids are playing in nowadays, and they've had to compete with the college stadiums because the college stadiums have gotten so much better. And when you're trying facilities, if you're trying to get a guy to leave college after his junior year and go play professionally, the facilities used to be used against them. But nowadays, the professional people do such a good job of paying for the college education to make it more easy for a guy to leave, to go back and have the rest of his school paid for.
Take me your transition from player to coach.
Well, you know, unlike a lot of people, I've always been able to look at things pretty realistically. You know, I just gotten married in '83. I'd been with the Yankees playing. I had an opportunity to continue playing for them in AAA, hoping for an opportunity. I could go to another team and play in AAA, or they offered me a job as a hitting coach in Fort Lauderdale in the Florida State League. And like I said, I just gotten married. If there's such a thing as stability in baseball, you know, I'd spent a lot of time trying to develop a certain reputation with the Yankees as a player, and you know, I thought it was quite a humbling thing to be asked to be a coach in a good way. And I've been able to look at myself pretty realistically. You know, I look at the way they were doing things with free agents and you know, I could put it in play and do a lot of things that you had to do to be a winning player in the minor leagues. But if you don't hit the ball where the grass doesn't grow and you don't possess a real big tool, you know, I was a guy that coaches and managers wanted on their team in the minor leagues because it helped them win. That's how they got up. But you know, that jump between AAA and the major leagues is the biggest jump in professional sports. And, you know, in football, you can come out and impact the NFL right out of college. Basketball, you can come out of high school. LeBron James can impact the NBA. I can go on and on. But in baseball, nobody does that. There are very few instances. And the jump from the minor leagues in baseball, the level of play of the big leagues, is huge. And I always felt like I needed to look at it realistically and look. And when I met Don Mattingly, I knew I wasn't going to be the first baseman of the New York Yankees, and roomed with him and saw what the ability he had. So I moved on to another chapter in my life. And you know, one of the things I said to myself was I was going to stay out of the cages. You know, a lot of coaches don't completely commit to the coaching part of it. They think they still play. They think they didn't get the break they should. They go in with a chip on their shoulder instead of embracing it. And you know, I never really looked back on it. I was very proud of the career I had as a player, and I looked at the new career as a complete different breakoff.
Once you became the manager of the New York Yankees, of the big league team, what was it like for you?
Well, you know, I remember the first press conference, they asked me how I was doing. I said, well, I got a crick in my neck. I'm a little stove up from traveling. And they had no idea what I was talking about. It's hilarious. And, you know, nowadays they get 4-, 5-, 6-year contracts. I got a 1-year contract, and with barely a bump from what I was making coaching. They asked me about it, and I said, well, you know, I got a 1-year contract, so I'm on a 1-year plan. And what was I going to do, turn it down? I got an opportunity to manage the Yankees. And, you know, we were right in the middle of the pack payroll then. I had struggled for a long time, and I was very familiar with the minor league people we had coming up because I'd had a lot of them and managing in Oneonta and New York Penn League and Fort Lauderdale and Florida State League and Albany in the Eastern League. I'd had them in the Instructional League managing them there, so I was very familiar with our minor league people. And we were finally able to commit to people like Bernie Williams and Mariano Rivera and Jorge Posada and Andy Pettit, Derek Jeter. You know, all these guys were puppies back then. And Mr. Steinbrenner was on probation at the time, so we didn't do like we had done in the past and trade these kids. We stayed with them, went through some tough times, but I think it kind of paid off. But it wasn't the New York Yankees as people think of them today. You know, the payroll was middle of the pack, and it was a very hungry group of fans.
What was it like to work for Steinbrenner?
Well, you know, he afforded me an opportunity for 19 years to support my family and take care of them and myself, and gave me a chance to play professional baseball, be a player and a manager with the New York Yankees. And, you know, Jeff, I understood the job description going in. You know, nobody wanted, I think that was probably why I got along so well there. Two things was that nobody wants to hear you complain about it. I mean, it's not like, you know, he's very hands-on. He owns probably the greatest sports franchise in the world, and he expects people to be very accountable and for what their job description is. And part of it is listen to what he has to say, and his family. He has a lot of passion for the Yankees, he and his family. And another thing, I thought I had an advantage coming from a small town because, you know, in Century, you were going to meet, well, we had one post office, one grocery store, one hospital, one drugstore. You know, you were going to meet these people every day. You didn't just blow somebody off or be discourteous to them or what have you. And your day-to-day relationships with people were very important. And I think that helped me in New York City because I don't know if people weren't used to it, but there was such a passion and energy in New York for the Yankees. And if you were part of putting that back together for them, they were very supportive. But I also knew how quickly that ball could go the other direction too. But I'd seen a lot of mistakes we had made when I was coming up. I think we learned more about what not to do than we do what to do from people we're around sometimes.
Speaking of people and relationships, I think one of the things, and correct me if I'm wrong about this, but one of the things of your separation with the Yankees is Steinbrenner wanted you to fire a couple of your coaches, and you didn't want to do that?
Well, it was more than two, but you know, I've been approached about writing a book and different stuff. So I'm very, very cautious about that. You know, those were things that happen. You know, there were 4 coaches after we got beaten in the playoffs in '95 that he was going to replace, and I just, you know, these guys were part of why we had success that we hadn't had in a long time. As the rest of their career shows, they've been great coaches for many years. And yeah, I remember my dad a long time ago said, at some point you're going to have to plant your feet and make a stand, and I had to, and it was painful because I didn't want to leave the Yankees. I had 2 contracts offered to me, but both of them were under the stipulation that certain people wouldn't be back, and I knew that certain guys that he would handpick would come in the locker room now and potentially destroy what was one of our real fortes from a makeup standpoint and a camaraderie standpoint and chemistry. But it was tough making that stand and not having any job out there. You know, fortunately after that, things moved very quickly, and I had some things to pick from. But in no form or fashion did I ever want to leave the Yankees. But you know, I was kind of forced into that situation. It worked out real well for them, and it worked out well for me.
I want to come back to where you went next, Arizona Diamondbacks. But before we leave the Yankees, tell me about Billy Martin.
Well, Billy was somebody that for some reason took me under his wing very early on. Back then, Billy would bring in all the minor league managers, and we were like little chickadees walking behind the rooster or the mama hen. Everywhere he'd go, he'd stop and explain certain things, why they did. I kind of chuckle today. I see guys who think they're inventing stuff that hadn't been done. Billy was doing this stuff on the backfields, you know, 20, 30 years ago. And when I got time to send all the managers down to start our spring training, he would always keep me there. I was kind of his chauffeur, which was another story altogether. That was some late nights, but I learned a lot of baseball from him. And you know, certainly he had his faults, like we all do. But I tell you what, there were times when he would start professing, and it was a great experience to hear the baseball imparted that he knew. And I'll always be thankful of him giving me that opportunity and talking to him. Last year of his life, he was supposed to come to Albany and scout our club for Mr. Steinbrenner, and called up and said, why don't you just fill this out and send it and put my name on it, which was one of the greatest accolades I've ever paid. That Billy Martin thought my opinion was good enough. Plus, Billy didn't want to come to Albany. I knew it was better than that. But it was a sad day when he passed away. Yeah. You know, through all his faults, he had a big heart, and he tried to make a lot of young people's path a little easier.
Yeah. Moving forward, Arizona Diamondbacks, they came in and said, hey, we like Buck Showalter. We're going to bring you on to build this team before the team was actually on the field. Tell that story. Well,
someone called me today and said, hey, we want you to go run an expansion startup process again. Would you do it? I'd go, no. Yeah, that's the hardest I've ever worked. You know, the two people say, hey, you had 2 years off. I mean, we had to, you know, do everything. And starting from a scouting department, a player development department, you know, the Major League Draft was coming up. We had to scout every player in baseball, 29 other teams, well, 28, not counting Tampa Bay, was part of the process. I spent a lot of time with the Rockies and the Marlins trying to find out what they would do differently. But not necessarily the pressure, but the commitment to you to be the point guy on this thing was very challenging. You know, from Yuma, Arizona, spring training, to Tucson, Arizona, to, you know, Dominican, Venezuela, Puerto Rico, Mexico, Colombia, Cuba. We hit all these stops trying to procure players. Japan, Korea. It was. I wouldn't trade it for anything, but it was, you know, the last month and a half before the draft, meeting from 8 to 10 every day for 2 months straight, and it was very challenging physically, mentally, and emotionally. But I wouldn't trade the experience for anything. And you know, we were just trying to keep them losing 100 games the first year, and which we were able to do, and then to win 100 games the next year. With some of the moves we made, we turned over a lot of players we drafted. Our approach to the draft was to acquire players that we could trade, and which was unlike what Tampa did. The one thing the Rockies and the Marlins kept telling me is, don't think you're going to put a championship club together by drafted players. You know, so we drafted people with arm strength and foot speed, tools that you can't really teach, and they're God-given, and we're always in demand, and we're able to turn those players over for people like Luis Gonzalez and Tony Womack, and through the draft with Travis Lee, and traded for Matt Williams, and just turned a lot of the players over. I think something like 31 of the 35 players we drafted that year.
Wow. Who's the most impressive player you've ever worked with?
Oh, geez, where would you start? It's difficult to, you know, I've been fortunate to be exposed to so many guys and you see common denominators the more you're in it. Things just don't happen by God-given ability only. You know, Don Mattingly was special in my life for what he stood for and the way he did things in the clubhouse, and learning why a guy's statistics might be ebbing. That he brings things to a team. You know, I chuckle when I hear a football coach say we weren't ready to play this week. You know, you play once a week. Yeah. You know, 15, 16 games in the NFL. You know, try strapping it on for over 200 games, counting spring training. Yeah. 7 days a week, traveling different time zones around and about. You know, it's a challenge, physically, emotionally, mentally, and you have to be able to evaluate people that can bring those elements, because it shows up on the scoreboard in baseball, because you have so many challenges 7 days a week. But I think being able to surround yourself with people like that in Arizona was important, and stood the test of time for quite a while there. But Donnie was one of those guys. He wasn't a stat guy. The only way he equated whether or not he had had a good day was whether or not the Yankees had won. Mm-hmm. And that's rare. And he was the captain of the team, and didn't speak that much, but when he did, he knew it was important. And I think he was one of the few guys around that realized the weight his words carried and was very careful about how he used them. You know, Kurt Schilling, probably my favorite pitcher I've ever had. Randy Johnson, I had him. They really fed off each other. Kurt was great for Randy. There's no secret why Randy had some of the greatest years ever with Kurt there, egging him on, so to speak. You know, they had a nice relationship, but they really fed off each other. But I've been, you know, with Mariano Rivera, seeing him at 19, 20 years old, with this, coming off the surgery he had at a very young age. A lot of people don't realize that he had some major surgery. Whitey Ford and Ron Guidry used to play catch with him on the backfield while we had him on the protected roster. And you know, back then you didn't come back from that surgery in 9 months. It was almost a 2-year thing, and we kept waiting on this guy, and it was well worth the wait.
Well, tell me about Jeter and A-Rod, Alex Rodriguez.
Well, you know, Derek was a guy. I remember the first time we brought him into Yankee Stadium after we drafted him, and his mom and dad were there, and his sister. And watching his interaction with his mom and dad and his sister, I felt really good about that. The challenges a lot of players have off the field in New York City weren't going to be a challenge for him. Very well grounded, very well raised, and I loved how he interacted with his sister. And little things you can look at that paint a picture of a player's makeup, and the ability obviously was there. But when we went in the playoffs in '95, Derek and those guys weren't eligible, but we, Gene Michael and I, made sure that they traveled with us because we felt like they were going to be a part of the playoff situation for a long time. And the experience they got, you know, going to packed stadiums in a playoff atmosphere, you know, Derek still talks about it. He thought that's what the Yankees were supposed to do every year, and that was good.
Yeah.
And taking Posada and Pettit and Rivera and Derek and those guys with us on the road was a lot of fun to watch it through their eyes, and it was great. You know, obviously I had Alex only 1 year in Texas, and because of our payroll situation, we couldn't sink that much money in one guy, so we had to move him. It's not a level playing field. The Yankees are playing with completely different rules, the Red Sox, Phillies, than most of the clubs are. Right. And nobody really wants to hear that this time of year because everybody just wants to know, is my club as good as this club? But Alex is an immensely talented guy, and you know, evolved a little bit over the years from that young, innocent kid that came out of Miami High School. You know, had so many people, you know, around him. Sometimes they weren't always giving him good advice, but I think he's in a good place in his life now, and I'm happy for him.
When you talk about those common denominators, you know, when coaches or even parents or whatever are looking at this young kid out here playing ball and saying, does he have a chance? Tell me what those common denominators are.
Well, you know, we're at the mercy of the mothers and fathers of the world when it comes down to it, because by the time you get somebody at my level, there's not a whole lot you can do to change them unless it's surround them with real strong peer pressure. And if a player doesn't care what his teammates think, that's one of the guys that has to go. If it's not important to him to please his teammates and try to make them better. And you know, I know I was with Cleveland for 1 year, and they asked me to go scout a player, and I won't name names. And you know, I said, don't tell me anything about him, what the previous scouts have seen. We're getting ready for the draft, and we draft like 10th in the country, 9th. We'd like for you to go look at this guy. So without any, I went in, and you know, I got there about an hour earlier, found out where his mom and dad were sitting, and his, I think his sister or brother was there, sat behind them. All I wanted to see was him off the field. Obviously, if he's going to be the 9th or 10th pick in the country, he's going to throw. He's going to have a great arm. He's going to have a great body. He's going to have some form of a breaking ball. You know, all that stuff's easy.
Right.
You know, but what I want to know, if I'm going to tell an organization to sink that type of commitment, that kind of financial venture into a player, I want to know more about him. And you know, I end up saying no. And fortunately for the organization, because of some of the things that I saw off the field, between innings, interacting with his teammates, umpires, what have you, he was going to have some challenges. Now, I said he's going to pitch in the big leagues because of his ability, but as far as a winning player down the road, it's not worth taking a chance on. So it always kind of shocks me, Jeff, how many people miss on off-the-ball evaluations, and all of a sudden they're surprised by it. It's just a matter of doing your homework.
And Bobby Bowden tell me, you know, it's character.
Well, people don't want to, you know, people don't want to hear that because we all challenge or question the things that we're not willing to bring sometimes. Yeah. And in baseball, more than anything, I'll say it again, because you play so many games, there's such a lure to give yourself a mental or an emotional day off because of the grind. And those guys, and that type of accountability only comes from your upbringing. And there's just so many challenges out there that will take you away from that if you're not strong.
Were you surprised at all the steroid scandal stuff with McGuire?
No, surprised, no. Disappointed, yes. You know, as a manager, because of where the union was at that time, the players' union, everybody's hands were tied. And I think everybody's excited from a standpoint that we've got something in place now where fans can sell themselves emotionally to it. And there'll be some other things come out, I'm sure, along the way. And but it's part of an era that we're all going to be aware of as we go forward. Shocked? I'm not shocked by much anymore as I get older, but for any manager or coach to say they weren't aware of some of the rumors and things going around and seeing the strength factor and some of the things that were happening is not being completely honest.
Why would a young man who seemingly has the world by its tail want to put his body in such jeopardy? Because I mean, it's no secret that those steroids have caused problems. I mean, going back to
there's a lot of ways to look at it, Jeff. Certainly the doctors prescribe them sometime for things, but let me paint a little picture for you. I've been in Dominican Republic for many times, setting up academies and what have you. You're a young kid in Dominican Republic who's basically going to cut sugar cane the rest of your life for about $1 an hour. And you're playing baseball at 16, 17, 18. Most of them aren't going to school past 10 years old. And you got this opportunity to take these steroids and get off that island and maybe do this or that. It may shorten your life by 10 years. It may cause some health problems. Until you've walked their walk, you don't understand the temptations they have, comparing what they have and what they haven't. Now, some of them would have played regardless, but you see it with a lot of the Latin American players, and it got into where a lot of the American players, the whole dynamic of it. But it's so easy just to say, oh, it's terrible, it's horrible, I can't believe they do it. Why would they even think about it? Until you've walked that walk over there and see what they have to pick from. And I've been outside the gates every morning at the academy when there's 30 kids out there, 15, 16 years old, wanting to come in and try out. Supposedly 15 or 16. There's not a whole lot of birth certificates working, and to see the clamoring for American baseball, a chance to get off the island, a chance to if they play 2 years in the big leagues over here, they can retire for life over there. And the challenges and decisions they make to them are a no-brainer for them. And fortunately for our game and for our fans, that's no longer going to be an issue.
Performance-enhancing drugs, one thing, but the guy that replaced you with the Rangers, Ron Washington, 2009, supposedly tested positive for cocaine. It's just come out recently in the press. Your thoughts on that?
Well, it's sad. It's unfortunate. I know Ron. He's a good human being, and it's something that I feel bad for baseball more than anything, and Ranger fans who, the organization's grown, with some of the things with the farm system and the potential to be more competitive, and now this is what they're talking about. I don't know the dynamics behind it, why, when, how long, this and that, whatever. I just, I know it's not good for the Rangers. It's not, they got new ownership there. They got a great ballpark. They got some talented young kids coming up, and it's going to be a challenge for them, for Ronnie, and I think but he'll be the first to tell you it's self-inflicted. And when you do those things and make those decisions when nobody's watching, so to speak, you have to pay the piper. And I think for him the best thing that happened is get on with the baseball season, get it behind him if it's possible. And unfortunately, it really puts the Rangers in a position that if they struggle or anything, the locker room and the atmosphere is such a big part of baseball, and it'll be, I wouldn't say interesting because I'm not looking forward to finding out about it, but it's going to be a certain dynamic of how that season unfolds in the locker room. But it's sad this guy worked so hard to get one of these jobs, and there's only 30 of them in the world, and to take that chance, I hope it works out for everybody, but it certainly cast a shadow over that team and Ronnie.
You're in town to help Pensacola Pelicans with an event tonight. How important, in your opinion, is a team like the Pelicans to a community? Well,
I've always said, in much as there's talk about football and somewhat basketball in Pensacola, and it's always been a baseball town to me. It's the one constant through the years. I go back to Admiral Mason Park. I can remember first steel spikes I got and being able to clang them around that concrete, walking in and out. And I was so proud. I wore them out in about 3 weeks, the bottoms of them.
Right.
But you're old when ballparks you remember as new, not Admiral Mason, are being torn down. That's when you first kind of go, ooh, I'm kind of creeping up there. But first of all, it's affordable. It's, a family can go out there. So many plans set up. I read some of them online with the Pelicans where family you can go watch a Pelican game for less than it takes to take your family to see a movie.
Right.
And you know, with the ballpark around the horizon, I think it's just going to be outstanding. I'm looking forward to being able to come to some games. You know, the setting. I've always looked at that land down there where they're putting the stadium, longing. I've always said, what a great place for a ballpark, and to see it be this close, and to know a lot of the people involved with the Pelicans and how they really want this to be a community thing and have a real pure heart about the whole thing. You know, it's not in it to make money. It's to put a product out there that you know, the fans are going to be happy with. And, you know, independent baseball, people shouldn't look at it any differently. There are guys that come out of it every year. It's being scouted very hard by major league teams. Guys come out there every year that play in the big leagues and are signed, and there's some good baseball. And I think the fans are able to commit to the players a little bit because there's not that flux like you have in single A and double A where guys are going to triple A, double A, back and forth. You know, you're going to see these guys and be able to sell yourself a little bit to them emotionally. And I'm jealous of the coaches and everything because there's a real purity about baseball at that level that you don't get just anywhere.
I can imagine it's just got to be a lot of fun right there at that level.
You know, that part is very enjoyable. Instructional league when I was there, and rookie ball when guys first come out of college. You know, I think we have it backwards. I think the guys that should be paid the most with the longest commitment are the guys that are in rookie ball. When a guy comes out of college or high school, their first exposure to what your organization, professional baseball is all about. You've got to have the right people there. But somehow that scale's flip-flopped and it's the other way around. I know when I ran the organization somewhat in Arizona, we made sure that we had people in those 2 rookie levels that had long-term commitments to them and said, this is what you're going to do, but we love what you represent to these young players coming in about organization and professional baseball. And it really came back to us twofold.
You give me kind of a quick answer on this. Will you ever manage again, or do you want to ever manage again?
We'll see. I don't stay up a long time, you know, worrying about it, thinking about it. You know, if the right opportunity is there. You know, I've had the tires kicked over the last 2 or 3 years about some things, and you know, I promised my kids that until they got out of high school and college that we would stay put in Dallas as much as we moved them around. My son Nathan gets out of high school this year, so my daughter's graduating from SMU, so we'll see where life takes us. And there's a lot of good people managing now. I hope nobody loses their job. Let's answer it that way, and you're not going to see quotes from me about coveting somebody's job. I've got a great job with ESPN. When the game's over, I fold the briefcase up and go home and don't care who wins.
You having fun with ESPN?
Yeah, they have a great passion for sports and doing things right and trying to teach the fans and also explain things that happen on the field that they may not know about. And they've got some good people there that have a great passion for it.
Buck Showalter, has been fun.
Is that it? Wow.
It's over.
It's painless. I appreciate it.
Hey, it's absolutely our pleasure. We appreciate you coming back. And also a special shout out and a special thanks to the Pensacola Pelicans for bringing Buck Showalter in and having him drop by our studios here. By the way, you can catch up with us on Facebook. Just look for us under Conversations with Jeff Weeks. In the meantime, we greatly appreciate you watching. Take good care of yourself, and we will see you soon.